Now we move to the second measurement in this lesson, which is unemployment. First of all, to understand the meaning of unemployment, let us divide the population into two kinds by looking at this flow chart here. So the population of any country can be divided into two main parts. So in the first part, we have individuals under 16 years of age. Individuals under 16 years of age. We have also, under this category, we have the individual in the armed forces. Also, we have institutionalized individuals. I mean by this, people who are in mental institutions, in jail, or in nursing homes. Or in nursing home. Now, the second part of the population is civilian non-institutional population. Or sometimes this category is called working age population or working age population. Now, this category of working age population or civilian non-institutional population can be divided into two types. First, not in the labor force. And the second one in the labor force. Of course, people not in the labor force, those like discouraged workers or people who are retired. Now, in the labor force, we can divide this into two parts. Employed and unemployed. Now let's focus on the last two parts, employed and unemployed. So now, after drawing this flow chart and showing that the population can be divided into these parts, now let's focus on the last parts, employed and unemployed. So as you can see, labor force is equal unemployed plus employed. So what actually do we mean when we say employed? A person, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics, a person is employed if he did any work for pay, whether a part-time work or full-time work, is considered employed. Or he did at least 15 hours of unpaid work for his family's operated business. How about a person who is unemployed? A person is said to be an unemployed if he does not have a job and he is actively looking for work and is waiting to be called back to his job. So this is the definition of a person who is employed. A person who doesn't have a job, is actively looking for work, and is waiting to be called back to his job. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics defines also a person who is unemployed if he falls into one of these categories: job loser, job leaver, or job reentrant, or job new entrant. Job loser, who was employed and he was either fired or laid off from work. Job leaver, who was employed and he quit his job. Job reentrant, who was previously employed, quit for some time, and now re-entering the labor force, re-entering to look for a job in the labor force. And job new entrant, who never had job before and now entering the labor force to look for a job. So we can say that unemployed and unemployed is equal job loser plus job leaver plus job reentrant or plus job new entrant. Now, again, we have also to distinguish an unemployed from a discouraged worker. A discouraged worker is not in the labor force. A discouraged worker differs from a person who is unemployed. A discouraged worker is a person who doesn't have a job and he is not actively looking for work because he believes that no one will give him a job. So therefore, a discouraged worker is not part of the labor force. According to some economists, a discouraged worker will cause the unemployment rate to be biased downward because he is not counted as in the unemployment rate. Now we move to discuss the other rates: the unemployment rate, the employment rate, the labor force participation rate. What actually do we mean when we say the unemployment rate? The unemployment rate is the number of unemployed as a percent of the labor force. So the formula can be written as follows: unemployment rate is equal unemployed over labor force times 100. Okay? Now, in employment rate is the number of employed as a percent of the working age population or the civilian non-institutional population. So we can write it as this: employed over working age population times 100. Now, the labor force participation rate is the labor force as a percent of the working age population. As you can see from these formulas about the unemployment rate, employment rate, and labor force participation rate, you can see that because the denominator in the unemployment rate is not the same as the denominator in the employment rate, then we can say that if the unemployment rate is 20%, that doesn't mean that the employment rate is 80%. Why? Because the two ratios differ in the denominators, okay? Because the employment rate, the denominator of it is labor force. However, the denominator of the employment rate is working age population. Therefore, when we say that the unemployment rate is 20% or 10%, that doesn't mean that the employment rate is 100% minus whatever value of the unemployment rate. If it is 10%, doesn't mean that the employment rate is 90%, okay, because of different denominators. Now let's talk about some kinds of unemployment. Now we have to mention three kinds of unemployment, namely frictional unemployment, structural unemployment, and cyclical unemployment. Let me write them down. Now, the first two kinds of unemployment, namely frictional unemployment and structural unemployment, are so healthy. You know, in a changing, dynamic, and healthy economy, you see many jobs are being created and many others are eliminated. So, these two types of unemployment are so healthy. Frictional unemployment, the main cause of frictional unemployment is changing market conditions. According to economists, this type of unemployment, frictional unemployment, is represented by qualified workers with transferable skills who change jobs. According to many economists, the basic cause of frictional unemployment is incomplete information or imperfect information that prevents workers from leaving one job and getting another instantly. So it takes time to make the transfer. During this time, the individuals are frictionally unemployed. Now, the second type of unemployment, which is structural unemployment, is also healthy, okay, and exists in a dynamic, healthy, changing economy. It differs. The structurally unemployed individual differs from the frictionally unemployed individual in that it doesn't have transferable skills. a person who is structurally unemployed doesn't have transferable skills. So the choice for this person is either extended unemployment and retraining. Many economists say that structural unemployment is largely due to automation or labor-saving devices. So what happens if I give example about the structurally unemployed person? Let's say a person who has been working in a computer company for 30 years. When he was hired in that company 30 years ago, he had only high school skills. So now after 30 years, the company has updated its machines. So now it has very advanced machines, and these advanced machines need individuals or workers with university skills. So now the company will either lay off that person who has been working for it for 30 years, or it will ask him to go to college and get higher degree, because these new machines are very complicated and they don't fit his old skills. So this person is frictionally this person, when he is laid off, is frictionally unemployed because he does not have transferable skills. Now we move to the last kind of unemployment, namely cyclical unemployment. This type of unemployment is due to business cycle. It is not the same as the other ones. This one is bad in the economy because when the economy is going through a recession, many workers might be fired or might be laid off. And when the economy is going through an expansion, of course, less people will be unemployed. Therefore, when the economy is going through a recession, then you expect many workers will be laid off, and therefore maybe the workers who are laid off, maybe they are very qualified. However, because the economy is going through a recession, therefore they are becomes unemployed. So this type of unemployment is very bad for the economy. Now, after that, we move to talk. Remember that cyclical unemployment is equal cyclical unemployment rate is equal the existing unemployment minus the natural unemployment rate. Existing unemployment rate minus natural unemployment rate. Now, what actually do we mean when we say natural unemployment rate? Now, we already talked about frictional unemployment rate and structural unemployment rate. Both kinds of unemployment are very natural, healthy. Therefore, natural unemployment rate is equal to the sum of frictional unemployment and structural unemployment rate. So, natural unemployment rate is the sum of frictional unemployment rate plus structural unemployment rates. Economists usually estimate the natural unemployment rate to be between 5 and 6.5%. Now let's move to the full employment. That concept, economic concept, full employment, of course, it does not mean that zero unemployment. So when we say full employment, we don't mean that the economy has zero unemployment, because in a healthy, changing, dynamic economy, some unemployed will exist because of the presence of frictional and structural unemployment. So now full employment does not mean zero unemployment. This is because of the presence of structural unemployment and frictional unemployment. So full employment is the unemployment that exists in an economy that operates at the natural rate of unemployment.